Hey everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. I hope you're all doing great today. So today we are going to do something kind of fun, I think. It should be kind of interesting. I'm excited. We are going to try, we're going to turn and see what the results are on the vertical. We were doing the color splash or graffiti or color drop, where you basically have clear resin and you drop in colored resin on top and it just kind of goes through the clear. So you have like these kind of bands of color in between, like in a clear blank kind of thing. It's kind of a cool looking blank. The drawback to these is if you're making a normal kit pen where you're drilling out the center and putting a tube in, you got a lot of clear blank, right? So you gotta cover up the clear. And in this case, you have to paint the inside of the blank itself, not the tube. Well, realistically, I mean, you could actually go 3 ways with coloring stuff on the inside. You probably want to paint the tube as well as the inside of the blank, and you could go one step further if you're really, crazy about this and really want to cover everything and have that color. You can also add a little bit of dye to the glue itself. So there's lots of stuff going on, but basically you just want to make sure that you can't see the tube or any glue splotches or anything that's going on. You want to keep that kind of, covered up and looking good. Now, the problem with this is the clear parts of the blank are going to look like that color. Whatever you paint the inside of the blank, it's going to really look like, almost take on that in the blank itself. So you're almost adding a color to the blank. So it'll change the look of the blank when you're doing a normal kit pen. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're, picking the colors that you want. And also try to think about like, okay, in the clear spots, I'm going to paint the tube or paint the inside of the blank, whatever color. Because it ends up, instead of, you've probably seen, if you paint the tube, it looks like the tube's painted, but in this case, when you paint the inside of the blank, it almost looks like the blank has that color in it. It's deeper, but it kind of looks that way. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to make a diamond painting pen, you don't have to worry about any of this. The blank is going to keep its look and feel because you're not drilling out the inside of it. So that's a really good option for these types of blanks. The other way is if you go for kitless, you still are drilling out the center of the blank and you're going to have a bunch of clear stuff and you're going to want to polish that. So keep that in mind. You could do the painting on the inside as well, but it's the drawback to painting the inside of the blank is sometimes you can't really get that paint on really well unless you're very careful and put on like 1,000 thin coats. So anyway, all that being said, we're going to see what the results are. I was a little skeptical going in. Usually you're going to do this horizontally, and it works really well. It's a proven method. You just basically fill, maybe about 3/4 of the mold, and you could do even individual slots, but you would want to do it horizontal, or typically in the past people have done it horizontally. And then you just kind of layer the color, and the beauty of that is you can put the color wherever you want, and it's going sideways through the blank instead of trying to just come down. And the other thing is it's only 1 inch deep, so you definitely are going to get the color throughout the blank kind of thing. Doing it vertically, you're talking 1 inch versus 6 inches or longer if you were doing like the bespoke length, which I didn't even try because I don't think that would work particularly well. Well, I didn't think so. So I figured let's try 6 inch, or I think they're like 5. What are these things? 5 3/8, whatever. I wanted to try that first and see if it even worked, and then then maybe if it was really cool, then go for the big ones. All right, so let's see here. Kevin's still alive. Yes, that's what I like to hear. I like to hear that, man. Me too. Me too. All right, so here are the results. Here's what we got going. Oh, let me go grab the blanks so you can see. If you didn't see the demolding. Let me go grab those. We only did one batch because I was like, I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical about this. Let's see how this goes. And if these don't work out particularly well, what I'm going to do is just make because these are going in the Pen Blank Club boxes. If they don't work out, then I'm going to do my normal method and just pour it. Probably use the single slot type thing. You can either use like a silicone floppy, or I'll probably go with, I really like, for these ones, I really like the Turner's Warehouse ones. They're rigid. I don't know. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But, all right, so here's the blanks. Here's the blanks. Okay, so we got a couple different things. So we tried a couple different temperatures to pour at. These ones on the right, we poured at an earlier temperature, and you can see there's more color going through the whole blank. It's still kind of hanging out at the top though, okay? Now, the other thing that I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this unless maybe if I put a light underneath. If I hold these up to the light, what I notice is, I don't know if this is gonna work. That's gonna kind of, I don't think that's gonna really work. I don't know if this is gonna work at all on camera. Maybe a little bit. You might be able to see that in the middle, like what's going on here, a lot of it, and you can kind of see that down on this end, but even in the top, this looks like there's like color everywhere, but actually it's kind of just wrapping around the outside more. So we'll see how this all goes, because what I did was I was a little worried about it being spread throughout instead of just dropping down. A lot of times it'll just kind of sink in one kind of stream. So I decided to go for just a little bit of a swirl. And you could maybe get depending on which kind of, if you did the hook stick, I think I just did a straight one. And you can see that it just kind of wrapped it around a little bit. So the question is, how much is actually going to be in the blank after we've turned it down? Now, this is the other one that we poured at a higher temperature. And you can see there ain't much color down in the bottom there, like at all. So that's interesting. Kind of expected that. So I guess the moral of the story with that is, if you're gonna do this vertically, you're definitely gonna have to get that stuff poured at a low temperature. I think we poured it like, what did we pour at? Oh, we poured the first ones at around like 87, like pretty early. So I think that, whatever your temperature pouring in your shop is at, I think you're going to want to kind of go for like, 90, maybe even like right after you're done. The problem is at the lower temperature, if you're, mixing it around, you may get some color bleed. I don't really see a lot of like bleed per se necessarily. I mean, it looks like there is a little bit on the outside, but I think that tends to happen on the outsides, though, especially that white will make it kind of bleed. So I don't know. Now, what I've done here for today is we've got a couple different blanks. Now, what I did, obviously, half of this blank is kind of useless. I mean, you could paint it and it'd be one color, but that's kind of useless. So what I did was, I was kind of curious to see, because there's the same amount of color in the blanks that didn't get much. And I thought, well, let's just see what this looks like. So I just cut it, and we're just going to do, this is more of just a test to see, this is like a Sierra size, but there's a lot more color in here. And the point of why I'm doing this, why I care to look at this, is one thing that you could maybe do with this is, instead of really going for that kind of color drop thing or graffiti, like the horizontal where you got like bands of ribbons of color, what you could do is reduce the amount of clear that you're starting with and pour a lot more of the colored stuff in there. And it'd be more packed in, and you're not really getting that wispy banding of it. You're getting just a kind of a different way of pouring with a lot of color in there. So I don't know. I don't know if this all translates, but I thought, let's just turn up a Sierra. I'm not even going to worry about making a pen necessarily. The other problem with this blank is, and I'm going to cover some stuff about the painting. I had some issues and I couldn't get the tube in. So this one's kind of jacked. Like, I literally had to hammer it in and it still wouldn't even go in. So, and it wasn't I don't think the glue really set up. The problem is the paint was too thick. The hole was too small, basically, and other things were going on. So that one didn't work out too well in the first place. Oh, that's the wrong screen. Okay, so the second one, we're going with a Zen. I thought I could kind of get, like at this bottom area, there's a lot of clear. It doesn't look like it because you can see some red. But what I did was I painted the inside of the blank red. Okay, so anything red in here is me painting the inside of the blank. And same goes for this one. There's a lot of white right here. This was clear. So you can kind of see some different white areas. Now, it's a little harder to tell because we did add white to the blank, but basically this whole area is like paint for the most part. A couple of little thin strands. So anyway, it's an interesting thing, you know, doing this. Is it going to be awesome? I don't know. You know, like we know that doing it horizontally works, and they look like pretty good blanks. Now, I want to go back to the painting thing. So I mentioned I would recommend one of two things. If you can find a model paint that's really thin, that's not a bad option. I really would not recommend doing the acrylic paints. Acrylic paint is really thick, and unless you're going to actually take the time to find another drill bit that's a like tiny bit bigger than the normal one that you would use for whatever pen kit, which means that you're probably going to have on hand metric, SAE, and possibly wire and or letter drill bits, like every drill bit known to man. It gets hard to tell how much you need fine increments to just make a slightly bigger hole. You don't want it too big or else the tube's just going to be flopping around. However, if you got too much paint in there, the hole's smaller effectively. So the other way to go, a lot of people have spray paint. It's a thin thing. Usually these things have, you know, like some sort of a, they're made to work with plastics. They still don't work excellent with plastics, and you know, in general, like paint on plastic doesn't work great, but they usually have a little bit of primer built in. Find something that is a little bit more focused on like plastics, and that's why like model paints, a lot of times those work pretty well with plastics, and they're thin if you can find thin ones. But the way that I do it is I just grab a little cup, like the little 3-ounce mouthwash cups, and you know, shake up your paint, and I just literally spray a ton of spray paint in the bottom of the cup, so you're basically just making a puddle of paint. And then I think the best way to do this is use it like a Q-tip. I swear I bought like a Q-tip box at some point, and I couldn't find it. So instead, what I had on hand were, I'm going to show you, I bought these a while ago. These are just little foam tip brush things. I think they're like a makeup thing. And that worked fine, but I think Q-tips are just really the way to go. Most people have them on hand. And then you just basically, like you're painting. You could use a paintbrush, like a small paintbrush as well, but I still think these foam type things, or like a Q-tip, works even better. And so you'll take, you know, wherever the hole is and just kind of paint around in there. And the way to approach this is, it's not going to look amazing, especially on the first round. And what you'd rather do is put on a bunch of really thin coats to try and cover everything, rather than try and glop a bunch in there, which is what ended up happening with this one. I was using a paint brush, and it just wasn't working that well, and it ended up kind of globbing a bunch of paint in there, and it created too much. I overdid it. So that's what I would do, is just grab something like a Q-tip and just kind of keep on adding a little bit more, and try and get everything covered as well as possible. Now, another little tip that I keep forgetting to do beforehand, I think something that might help this a little bit is maybe try and douse the inside of the blank after you've drilled it out, or even take like a Q-tip or something like that. And use denatured alcohol and just clean it out on the inside, because there's still, like, especially drill bits may have some oils or something on them. And if you get oils or something on there, the paint's just not going to stick. So try and maybe clean out the inside of the blank even with a little bit of denatured alcohol, and that might help get that paint to adhere. Make sure that you let it dry and all that stuff. But couple random tips to help with these super clear blanks. And this, it doesn't go for just these blanks. If you got something that's got a lot of transparency or clear that you want to cover up, you're going to have to paint the inside of the blank, and all these things hold true to the, you know, whatever it may be. So let's see here. Oh, you can get the thinner. Yeah, that's work. Yeah. Yeah, so whatever you can do to get like a thin, but you also want it to not be like too diluted, or else it's really not going to cover. So it's, you know, it's a balancing act a little bit. But anyway, let's see here. Let's see. Making sure I'm not missing any questions or anything. Okay. Yeah, and I haven't tried model paint for a long time. Another one that might work is fingernail polish. That may be in the same category. You may get, I don't know for sure, but you may get decent results with fingernail polish. But again, a lot of people have like acrylic paints, like those little paint pots and stuff. And they're so thick, they just don't really work that well. You really are probably gonna have to drill an oversized hole. And that can be, that can be kind of a pain to do that. To try and find the right size that it's not too big, and like to do that, you've got to have like every drill bit known to man on hand, which I do, but I don't do enough of these to really worry about it. Plus, I like to kind of be the guinea pig and just be like, okay, well, this is what I did. You know, minimum effort, not that many tools or, you know, stuff like that, or lazy way of doing it kind of things. And like, here's what to expect. Like, don't do it that way. You know, take a little bit more effort and you'll get better results kind of thing. So it lets me be lazy, and it also shows you when not to be lazy. Sometimes you can get away with it. All right, so let's see here. Let's switch over to this view. And we'll go over to the lathe view. And we got things set up. So I think what we'll do is we'll just knock out this this smaller one, the Sierra, first. Another thing, because I'm no joke, I was pounding this with a hammer. You might be able to see this one side of this thing is like deformed. So what I have to do, my normal bushings, you know, the TBC bushings, they don't fit because they fit really well. So I got one side. TBC works, and I'm going to use the TBC on that side. But I do have some Sierra, you know, like the old, what do they call that? Mandrel style bushings. They tend to be sloppier, which is also another reason why I like using TBC bushings, because they fit better. But I could not get the TBC in there, but this one's got enough play that it's tight, but it fits. So I'm just going to hook up one of my TBC adapter bushings to that side and use the old one on one side and use the TBC real bushing on the other, and we'll be good to go. And I'm still minimizing the points of contact, or, you know, like the pieces and things that are going on in there. That's half of why I like the TBC bushings in the first place, is you're limiting how many points of, you know, I don't know how to explain that, but different points, links in the chain kind of thing. The fewer links, if you know, I mean, the easiest way is if you could just mount up the drive center and the live center to your blank. That would be the minimum, and it would be the truest turning. This is a little overkill, obviously, but you know, I got a TBC bushing, so I'm going to only use the 1 point on one side. We'll do 2 on the other. I still say, even still, I think that the TBC bushings with the adapters are still going to be a better turn, more accurate than most people's mandrels. There's just enough play in those mandrels typically that the TBC bushings are a little bit better. Now, some of this stuff is, like I said, a little bit splitting hairs, but if you've also got a lathe that isn't particularly well lined up or has play in it, this can also help in those areas. And that's actually why, when I got into TBC bushings, I was on a Shopsmith, and the tailstock didn't even, it had a lot of play. way too much play. So I couldn't get things round. So I was always messing up mandrels and doing stuff. Even on my Comet, though, I always had a problem with those mandrels. Partly because I tended to over tighten the tailstock. That, you know, part of it was my fault, but even brand new out of the box mandrels, I just didn't, I mean, they were not great for me. So let's see, Bone Crush is here, what's up? All right, so let's see what we got here. Is this thing even centered on the blank? Let's look at the camera and make sure that we got things rolling here. Zoom in a little bit there. All right, I got me some carbide. Oh, let's get that thing tightened a little bit better. Getting closer. Almost there. Still got a little bit on the edges there. This end is definitely vibrating more, and I don't necessarily think it has to do with the bushings. I think it's actually because that thing is like all bent and weird. The tube itself. Okay, that ought to be good. Let's see what we got here. Move you guys around. Might have to turn that light down just a little bit more. Picks it up better. All right, so what do we got? What do we got? Not too bad looking though. But as you can see, there is a lot of white. All that white is, you know, the paint that I did on the inside. So, you know, we don't really have a whole lot of color left. But where there is color, I mean, this pretty much to me looks like Fordite, really. That's the first thing that just pops into my brain when I look at this. Where you got a bunch of those layers going on. And the other beauty of this, so one of the things about making these blanks is, like I said, at first glance when you're looking at this, there's a lot of this white. And there's a couple areas where I can see I didn't get it fully covered on the paint, but there's, it'll probably be a little noticeable. It's almost like a glue splotch looking kind of thing. But underneath there, I've got my painted tube, and that's the reason. It is really hard to tell if you've gotten the entire thing, especially when you got that much clear. Did I get every little dot painted? I don't know. And so that's why you really want to stack these things. And you could even argue, there's a very good argument for going paint the inside of the blank, paint the tube, and even paint, add a little bit of dye to the glue itself. Like, just to cover all your bases and not have anything look unpainted or anything, any weirdness going on. But what I was going to say is, having that clear, even though it is problematic and it is going to alter the way the blank looks, but it's so cool because these are going to be, there's like angles going on in here. Like, you can see 3 dimensions where the color is, and it makes a really cool looking blank. So we haven't even polished this, and it's already pretty cool looking, I think. Again, little disappointing with how much clear there actually is. And I think that doing it vertically this way, it lends itself to, you're not going to get a whole lot of color left. The other thing about to keep in mind, and this is something that I was thinking about a little bit more on this vertical method, I think that you need to adjust, maybe not 50-50 or something like that necessarily, but like, I put a very tiny amount of, the amount of resin percentage-wise that I used that was colored was, I think we did 10%. Let me go back and double check. I'm pretty sure it was like 90% clear resin that is in these blanks off the bat. So yeah, 10, 20, 30, 40, 60 divided by 360. Well, okay, 16 to 17%, but that's a very small amount of resin in total that's colored in these blanks in the first place. So how much of the blank is going to have color in it necessarily, you have a little higher chance because of doing it horizontally, you can kind of place the resin where you want it. So that 10-15% can be placed thinly throughout the blank a little bit easier. I think it's just going to be very difficult doing it vertically, but I think if you ramped up to 25% or something like that, 30, out of the total amount of resin used for the blank that is colored, I think that you could get a little bit more coverage, let's say. And I also think that if maybe you switched up, I'm pretty sure I just used a straight stick to kind of swirl it. I think if you went with the hooked version, you might get it strewn around a little bit more, possibly. Okay, so they have hope. I don't think these are total duds at all. Are they great, or is there a reason to do them vertically? That's going to be the question, right? So let's see here. Sorry, Paul, I didn't stop. I'll try and stop a little bit on the way on the next one. Let's see here. Yeah, you could use glow in the dark. Honestly, the white is super heavy too. That's why you want to add white throughout your colors. You could argue that the white, it's almost as heavy as the glow powder. Let's see here. Yeah, definitely kind of Fordite looking. Oh yeah, you could do different colors of paint. I got to be honest, I actually like having one so that I can see the thing that I did. And actually, I'm feeling this blank, and there's like kind of a little bit of a bump on one end, so This thing might be, originally I was like, I don't know if this is even going to be good enough to make a pen out of. Partly because I had problems with getting the tube in there, but I think everything's okay. Well, one thing, because that thing is bent in there, I don't know if the parts are going to go in particularly well on any kit, but either way, let me get this thing kind of a little bit fixed here on these ends. Kind of smooth it out a little bit, then we'll polish it up and see what the real result is. Now, here's the other thing. So that looked fine, you know, and it looked interesting. Now, the thing is, then when you polish this, though, you know, obviously the clearer everything becomes, the more polished and the more you can actually see inside everything. That's where the flaws start to poke out. So like I said, I find it fairly difficult to get that paint to look excellent on these. That's one of the drawbacks that I personally find. And, you know, part of that may just be because I'm a little bit impatient. I'm just like, okay, I don't have 3 hours to paint, you know, put very thin coats on this thing. So, you know, your mileage may vary. If you're a little bit more patient, I want to clean this water out, so I'm going to head up to the front real quick, get a fresh bucket. This stuff has been sitting around for a little while, and there's some junk in there, so let's just get some fresh water so we can get these things clean, clear, and nice. Okay. So unfortunately, the snowboarding season is pretty much up here, over, you know. All the places that I have a pass for are definitely closed. But overall, considering how terrible the winter was most of the time, April pulled through, and it wasn't terrible at the end. I'm a little bummed out though, because I was just getting, my legs were just finally getting pretty good, like stronger and everything, and then the season's over, and that tends to happen to me right when I'm feeling the best. So what that means is I got to just try and get up more during the main season. Let's see here. Yeah, well, you know, so I mean, yeah, that's a good, you know, Chris, a good way to mimic Fordite. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying, what I was thinking a little bit about, when I was saying that, you know, maybe if you did go like a 50-50, like really increase the amount of color. So, and this was when I was talking about it like earlier, I think you could maybe just slightly increase the amount to like, you know, 25-30%, something like that, 20 to 30. And you might be able to get it strewn throughout the blank a little bit better than this, but you're still kind of going for where you got these pockets, a good amount of pockets in there that are clear. But, you know, if you start going up to like 50%, and you're just, you know, so you fill the tube about 50%, and then you're just dumping like layer after layer after layer of these colors on top, adding the white in there to, you know, here and there. So let's just say you had like 4 or 5 colors, one of them being white. You know, you dump a bunch of very thin, small amounts on top of each other, but you're doing that for like 50% of the blank, and then go in there with a, you know, little stirring stick kind of thing. I mean, at that point, you might be able to get very close. But, you know, again, I think the big question is vertical pours of this type really worth it? Because you can make the same claim for doing it horizontally and you got so much more control to really get those colors and get the banding where you want it, that I don't know, and you can still stir it in a horizontal mold. So that's the big question I have, is it really worth messing with doing it vertically? Or should we just kind of stick with the horizontal thing? I don't know. You know, like I really like pouring vertical blanks. I find them so much easier to cut, obviously, for me, but I can also just kind of, I don't know. At this point, I kind of prefer having round blanks. They're easy, just chuck it up in the call it chuck, drill it out, move on, you know, everything's easy. And you're saving resin. That's one of the things. Plus, you're just not having to, one thing I never liked was having to knock the corners off of square blanks. But, you know, all we're talking about are a few conveniences where I think there's enough drawbacks to say, I don't know, I think I'd rather just do it horizontal at this point. So, I don't know. Yeah, you might get a little bit of bleed. I really, we poured these at like 87. I mean, there's really no color bleed. Now, one thing I do want to mention about that is if you drop the amount of clear to 50%, then you're pouring, you know, gravity is going to affect things more at that point because you're pouring deeper. And that is another drawback, let's say, to vertical in general. You're just not having to dump the resin as deep. It doesn't fall as far into the mold when you're pouring horizontally. So you have a little bit more control over keeping blanks, keeping color bleed from happening when you're pouring horizontally. Either way, but I mean, I don't know, for the most part, there's just not, I mean, especially, now this is probably the top, I'm guessing. Well, I don't know. There's really not that much at all. Like, I don't know if I see any color bleed in this. Maybe a little bit like right here where it's thinned out, but when it thins out, it does that anyway. It kind of has an appearance of bleed, but what's really happening often, and in some cases it is color bleed, like it literally bled together, you know, and you got like, if you got red and white next to each other, you got pink in the middle, but, or, you know, our favorite yellow and blue. But a lot of times what ends up happening and causes the appearance of color bleed is actually because the you know, one color is so thin next to another that it's not that it really mixed together, like in the sense of like the blue and the yellow like literally went right next, you know, like together to make a green. It's more that it's just visually having a very thin amount where there's like see-through, you know, it's so thin that it's see-through, and then having something, you know, some other color right behind it, I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, I mean, is that color bleed, or is it just a visual problem because of the thinness? Because the dye particles didn't necessarily combine, but it does appear bleedy, you know, so it's kind of a tough thing. I guess it's color bleed either way, depending on that thickness of each color. You know, if it looks green, I mean, I guess it's bleed. I don't know. Yeah, production costs. Well, for me, I mean, that's you know, like I said, once I started pouring vertical blanks, the mica powder ones, because I always did square no matter what, forever with my blanks. I knew what to expect. One of the things that I really liked about square blanks and having to cut a brick open, there's no question what's on the inside of the blank. Like if I messed up or something, like the blanks for some reason didn't look good, I knew for sure because you cut into them. That's one of the biggest drawbacks to round blanks is the outside. You have no clue what the inside looks like. They kind of tend to look terrible on the outside because whatever's rolling down the outside of the tube is what you see on the outside of the blank, and that's not what the inside looks like. So I always stayed away from it because of that, actually. But for me, the amount of work involved in cutting bricks of blanks it's just tedious. And really what spurred it on is, we had COVID and the supply chain shocks caused the price of everything to rise so much that I was either going to have to massively increase the price of my blanks or figure out a way to cut costs. And the material cost of the blanks isn't that high compared to the amount of labor that when you're doing those square ones. So I thought, okay, well, if I can figure out vertical blanks, I'll be able to keep my prices about the same because my time is worth a lot more than a little incremental cost in materials. So that helped, but then between inflation and tariffs and everything else, now we got another oil shock. And just to warn everybody, resin prices and probably everything else is going up again. So I just want to warn you. I would recommend if you need resin, I would order it like now, like right now. Before May, probably. Get an order in if you need it because the prices are going to be going up. But so I ended up having to raise my prices anyway, but a little bit. But let's see. So that's looking pretty good, sanded. But now we get to the polishing portion. I don't know why I got rid of the lathe buddy. I saw on Jake's, somebody said, what's the best combination or something? I forget exactly what was said, but lathe buddy plus magic juice is one of the best combinations. But anyway, yeah, going back to it, it's just the vertical pour is a good way to go. But there are just certain cases where, you can't really get around it. The best way to do things, or in some cases, the only way to do things is pour it in a brick of some sort, or, like horizontally, square, let's say. Another one is like hybrids. I've kind of tried to figure out a way to like cut little burls into 3/4 inch round things and, put it in a tube and then pour resin and it just cut it square, put it in a square thing and much easier. All right, step 1, done. Then again, I'm going to take my little rag here and wipe it off. That way I'm not adding any kind of possibility of scratches with paper towels. I think at the lower end, I still want to, someday I want to do a little experiment. I want to find out what the grit level, how abrasive is paper towel. Is it, step 1, step 2? Can I just use a paper towel for some of these things? We'll do that one of these days. Let's see, I wanted to stop and look at the chat real quick here too. Step 2, in the bank. Yep, resin price is going up. Problem is the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and so there's an oil shock. I mean, we've all seen the gas prices going up already. And resin is made with oil. It's an oil product, just like pretty much everything. So you're going to see prices going up because it's pretty bad supply shock. But you know, it doesn't stop at resin. I mean, I don't know, if you really look into it, like there are a ton of things that you wouldn't necessarily think are made with petroleum and are made with petroleum. So just be aware of that. We're going to have a little bit of price hikes. But I've got good authority on the resin thing. And even if the Strait of Hormuz opens tomorrow and everything goes back to normal, there's already been a supply shock on oil. So it really doesn't matter. I mean, if it stays closed longer, and you know, we stay in this war thing and oil supply is diminished for, you know, an extended amount of time, that's going to be much worse. But even if they opened it today and things went right back to normal, there's been such a supply shock that it takes time to deal with that. Yeah, transportation's another big one, obviously. Diesel costs are a big part. So, I mean, you know, realistically, everything's going up. It's probably a better way to say it, but, you know, it's a resin-focused thing, so... definitely, if you need resin, I'm telling you right now, if you need resin, you're about to need resin like next month, I would strongly recommend spend the money right now and get that order placed before you see prices go up, because I'm pretty sure they're going up, and I wouldn't doubt that they're going up like next month. All right, so on this one, I'm just going to use paper towel. I usually switch over to that other one, the little microfiber like kind of pad thing. I'm just going to go with paper towel for this one because I don't think I'm going to be able to make a pen out of it anyway. But we do want to see, it'll get clear. There's just maybe a couple more flaws possibly. I don't know. The yellow towel changes the tone of the pendling? Huh. Resin, yeah. Resin heist, yeah. I know, it's not fun. Feels like we've been kind of almost playing this game with prices since 2020. We haven't really had a break with any of this stuff. It really changes the tone, huh? Might just be, it looks like it's because the camera's kind of like, it's brighter, the towel's brighter, and the camera's kind of darkening, like the exposure's going down a little bit. I don't know. I don't exactly know what's causing that. Let's see here. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I went and got gas the other day, and I mean, we're inching up on $5 a gallon here. I mean, it probably will be soon, which that was like a California gas price. We've never, I don't know. I don't remember a time when we had anywhere near $5 a gallon. I was like, well, might have to slow myself down a little bit. I tend to be a little you know, heavy-footed there. We've been talking about getting Gretchen an electric vehicle for a while. That might be happening even sooner. Most of hurt driving is kind of just around town, and it just, gas cars just don't make a lot of sense if you can just come home, plug it in, doesn't take that much. And then the starting, stopping, and driving in traffic, and like the maintenance costs associated with a gas car is just kind of, I was pretty against them when, you know, 10, 15 years ago. I was like, electric vehicle, that's ridiculous. But what really kind of sold me on it was, anybody watch the Joe Scott Answers with Joe, or I don't know, I think his channel is just Joe Scott. He made it, I didn't really think about it, but the complexity and the amount of friction and moving parts in a gas motor is absolutely insane when you think about it. And you know, when you're talking about reliability, you're like, it's actually a wonder. This thing is literally just making thousands of explosions per minute, like contained in a metal block, you know, with like metal sliding against each other. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Like they really actually work pretty well. Let's see. Can you guys see? Compared to an electric motor, there's like no moving parts and no maintenance, and they're generally kind of just faster. But road trips and hauling things, there's certain things that EVs just kind of aren't amazing at right now. So I don't know if you can see, there's like a little, there's an area where you can see like, basically there was a kind of a hole where there's no paint on the blank. there's a couple little spots. And again, I was talking about the alcohol thing. I meant to do this, and I was going to try it and just kind of try and clean out the inside of the blank before I painted it. And I think that could help. Because these are areas where it almost seems like there was something blocking the paint. Like literally, there's these little pinhole things. And if there was like little bits of oil or something, contamination, it would make sense that it would cause these little things. But so again, you know, it's always a good idea to paint the blank and the tube, and possibly even the glue, the same color, to kind of cover some of that up. And there's a couple more little spots, and I find it's really hard to get the painting of the blank to be excellent. So just be aware of that. And again, I never have tried like cleaning it out with alcohol before painting it. I get all excited about painting the thing and start painting and go, oh, I forgot. But this is really cool looking. I mean, again, you know, so, you know, one side's got a lot more color in it. And that seems to be, I would say, one of the drawbacks to this vertical thing is the color tends to kind of hang out in like a band. We tried swirling it up, but it just kind of swirled it around the outside of the blank a little bit more than anything else. But even still, you know, we still got some color here. So not bad. But I want to mention one other thing. This was the blank. This was one of the blanks where we poured at a higher temp, which means that the color, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here and show you the blank, one of the full ones. The color was concentrated in half the blank, right? So, I mean, literally half the blank was like pretty much clear on this one. So we'll have to see how this works out on the other one that we poured at a lower temp, where, you know, that resin is spread out throughout the blank a little bit more. One thing that could happen is we maybe get a little bit more spreading of the color. We'll see. But overall, this looks cool. You know, this is a really interesting thing. And I'll tell you what, the colors that we chose for this are just the 5 colors that I sell, right? And they're like really weird colors: navy blue, coral, watermelon, army green, and robin egg blue, right? Like I mean, it's not 5 colors that I'd be like, oh yeah, we should really put those together, but they end up looking pretty good. So, and that's not to say that you got to go out and buy my colors because they're so great looking on these things. What I'm getting at is sometimes the colors that you think, you know, like in your head, you're like, oh, I don't think that'll go together. You might be surprised. That's what I'm kind of getting at with that is, You never know what might actually look pretty cool together. So don't be afraid to try weird combinations of colors sometimes in your blanks, because you might just be like happily surprised. All right, so I'll get kind of hold it up vertically. Sometimes that works a little bit better with the lighting. Stop shaking. Yeah, man. I mean, you know, so we got, yeah, there's a little bit of bleed because we didn't put purple. Got a little bit of bleed there, but, you know, again, I mean, okay. Little bleed isn't really going to hurt anything in something like this. I mean, even yellow and blue, that's one that it's just like the bane of my existence. However, in this scenario, I don't really think I would care that much. There's a little bit of green mixed in. Obviously, it's really cool when you get these bandings, you know, these stripes where they're like, there's no bleed or anything, but I don't really feel like it diminishes a whole lot in this area. It still looks really cool. And hopefully you're getting on camera, you're seeing like the three-dimensional aspects of this. I'm trying to, let me look at it under, yeah, like, I don't know if you can see that, but like where the green is, the white part is the inside of the blank, basically. So you can see depth in person. That green is like, has dimension to it, 3 dimensions. A lot of these things do. A lot of times you'll get these kind of gradient areas where there's like clear on top of the color and it's kind of at an angle, and it really makes these things look really cool looking. But like I said, there are some things, and model paint might be a better way to go. I don't know. That getting the inside of the blank painted well is going to make this stand out even more. If you can get that a nice even paint job on the inside of your blank, it's going to make them look 10 times better than having little splotches here and there like in that blank. Now, I do want to say though, I had some issues. That white I didn't get, it didn't work as well. I really think that having like a foam applicator, like a Q-tip, where it kind of just absorbs a bunch of color like everywhere on the little pad, let's say, I think that's better than trying to go in there with a little tiny paintbrush. It just doesn't work as well with paintbrushes, I find. And I paintbrushed that white one, so maybe this red one will turn out a little bit better. It does look pretty good. There are a couple little spots though that I can see, little shiny kind of areas. And I painted the tube red as well. And I just, again, spray painted that. All right, so does this fit? Just barely. It's not going to fit with the bushings. Okay. All right, so we're doing this. This is going on a Zen pen kit. Oh, and I got a link to the Zen pen kits in the description. I'll just drop, I have the link handy. I'll just drop a link to that if anybody wants to look at that. I really like those ones. It's the one with the magnetic cap. So it's like a single blank deal. You just press in the back in the little nib section. But it's got a magnetic metal cap, and I love them. So you get a rollerball capped thing, but the cap comes on and off so quick and easy. It's one of my favorite pens for like everyday use. It's just so easy. There's no twisting, there's no unscrewing caps, any of that stuff. Just pop it and go. All right, so let's get in here. I'm going to check the comments, see what you guys think about that. All right, let's see here. $6 a gallon, good Lord. Yeah, California. Talk to Fred. Yeah, resin stock. Let's see here. here. Yeah, you get taxed on them, but for me, like not having to fill up, you know, I like the idea of the electric, you know, because and a lot of people get hung up on like the quick charge, like how fast can it charge, and like thinking they have to like buy some 220 thing, you know, and like have that built into your wall. I mean, for the most part, if all you're doing is driving around town, like you barely used any battery in the first place, and then you can just trickle charge it with a 110. That's another thing that I didn't think really. I thought you know, when I first thought about it, I'm like, oh, you got to get like the, you know, if you're buying like a Tesla, you got to get like the Tesla power wall for whatever thing and all these. I'm like, good Lord, this is going to end up costing a fortune. If you add dye to the glue or using epoxy, you could maybe get away with CA, which that's what I used for these. And actually, that's a really good point, a good thing to bring up. I think that epoxy, I don't like using epoxy typically. I like using CA. It's just, I've been doing it forever and it seems to work really well for me. That's not to say that epoxy doesn't work. It works fine. But I ran into problems when I was using epoxy, where I wasn't getting a good glue bond on the inside. So I do it differently now. But so I've been using CA forever. However, the one thing I will say is sometimes CA glue, whatever chemicals are in it, I think that it can react more with the paint or even kind of break it down a little bit. So that's another issue. Now the problem is most of your like 5-minute epoxies and things like that, they're pretty thick, which is also not going to help because you're already adding some amount of material into your hole. Even if you use the thinnest paint and all these things, you're still making the hole a little bit smaller. Then you start using a thicker glue and it's, you know, so I'm on the fence which way to go. I had no problems necessarily using CA on this thing, on these two. I didn't get any issues. Now, the other thing is you definitely need to let that paint cure. And I think the more days that you let it cure, the less issue you would have with CA glue doing anything to it. I did this day after, so like, you know, 24 hours, and it seemed fine. There was no real issues, but even like the CA glue, when it squeezes out, tends to pick up some of the paint. So the more days you can let the paint cure, I think the better. But epoxy may not react as much with that spray paint. So that might be a good way to go. And generally, epoxies are a little bit better to dye in that sense. CA is kind of hard to dye. I mean, I guess you could squeeze out a bunch or something like that into a cup, but makes it a little bit difficult to dye in the first place. Whereas, you know, you mix the little 5-minute epoxy or whatever, 15, you can just add the dye to it, and it can, I don't know, it works better, I think, with epoxy. So I don't know, try it either way. If you are going to add the dye to it, I might lean towards epoxy over CA, just because it may just kind of be a pain otherwise. But anyway, let's get this thing rolling here, huh? Quit talking about it, do it. Let's see here. Yeah, Calvin, I really think you're gonna like the Zen. I like the fact that it's a long blank too. I mean, especially compared to like a Sierra where you're using like half the blank. Two-piece pens are cool, but then you got the connection sometimes can be funky. Like no matter what you do, you're gonna cut material out of the middle. And so sometimes that it just, you know, there's like parts missing. You can tell that the patterns don't really, even if you get it perfectly lined up, there's material missing and it kind of is off. So you don't have that issue. You got the whole blank to work with. It's a really nice, and it's in hand. It's a nice weight or something. I don't know. I've always really liked them. Yeah, the solvent, it can really mess around. Tried I'm not sure what you're saying, calling with acrylic paint. Spider web. Well, I wouldn't use, I don't know if what we're talking about. I wouldn't use acrylic paint in the glue, like in your epoxy. Don't use, that's not going to work. It's not compatible. Use your, you can use the divine pigments or any of the pigments that you use with resins in general. That's what you want to use. Don't use acrylic. The only time I would, and I really wouldn't even use acrylic to paint the inside of the blank. I wouldn't, that you could do that. That's not going to be, the cured stuff. It doesn't matter. But acrylic paint's so thick that it just doesn't really work that well, I don't find, for this. I think model paints or spray paint are a better option because they're thinner and they tend to want to, they're engineered to work with plastics a little bit better. Still just not the best bond in general, but obviously for the most part, I mean, that white one looked fine. This one's going to be okay. There's a little bit of I also found the red spray paint seemed like thinner, sort of. So I don't know. We'll have to see how this turns out. I didn't have any model paint on hand, so but I think that's a good option. So let's stop a couple times here as I go in. I don't know if it's gonna show you a whole lot, but it is kind of cool. You're gonna kind of be cutting through layers a little bit, and so you can kind of see. Yeah, this one looks like it might have maybe a little bit more bleed, although we're really not that far into the blank yet. Like I said, the outsides tend to be more, there's going to probably be more color bleed on the outside of the blank than the inside. But, this one was, we poured this at a lower temperature. So, in that sense, it's going to be prone to more bleed in the first place. So I don't know, we'll have to kind of see as we go. And that's, we were talking about the point of this is to see, is vertical a good way to do this? We're seeing, is it feasible? How does it kind of compare, whatever? And one thing to keep in mind, if you're only pouring, if the color only has to go an inch down when you pour horizontally, you're gonna want to pour it at a higher temperature. Because otherwise it'll sink too fast and you end up just with like a pool of color on the bottom. All right, let's stop and take a look. See where we're at here. What am I doing? Figure out how to zoom in here. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know how much color we're going to be left with in this thing. We got a pretty good stripe in the middle, right, like here, that seems deeper. But by the time we take off all this material, I mean, I don't know how much color we're actually going to have, which again plays into like how much colored resin do we start out with, and if you're spreading it through a 6-inch blank, if you've only got 15% in the first place, there's just not going to be that much color per square inch or whatever that you're left with, right? So I think if you're doing it vertically, you're almost going to have to bump it up. So I wanted to look at something. This end is, I'm wondering if I didn't get a very good glue joint. It's kind of rushing a little bit. I don't know, this end feels, I'm going to just say like loose, which could indicate that it's kind of not, like there's a little bit of vibration going on down there. Which could indicate that I didn't get a good amount of glue all the way around that end. And if that's the case, then that end may be prone to blowing up. Which doesn't really bode well having a standard cutter on. Sorry, I didn't zoom out. I mean, you know, there's still color, but compared to the other one where it was a lot more concentrated, I don't know, you know. I like the other one better at this point. So the question is, do I switch cutters out or not? I don't know. I think we'll just keep going. If it blows up, it blows up. Man, it's grabby though. I'm switching cutters. That thing was unnecessarily grabby. I think I might opt for a fresh cutter. Let's see here. The last one I used was not particularly awesome. I don't know, let's try this one. I got two of them sitting here. One of them might be dull. Let's see how this one cuts. That's cutting good. So that's good. For anybody that's not sold on on these negative rake cutters yet, I'm telling you, they can be a game changer. For the most part, I don't have a problem using a standard cutter on, you know, standard pen blanks. I do like using the negative rake on larger blanks. I just find that I think maybe there's just, I tend to move the tip more or something. I don't know. I'm just not hitting it in the right spot as well. So I find that I get more catches and stuff on larger blanks, and definitely on the insides of blanks. It's kind of a nightmare using standard. But in this case, I mean, it was grabby right in this area, and I switched to this negative rake, and it's not doing that at all. I still feel a little bit of a vibration, but it doesn't want to catch. It's that kind of catchy feeling is what I was feeling, and I'm like, this thing feels like it wants to go. I kind of agree with you. The red, is it the red? Yeah, like it really stands out. I thought, well, let's try something different, you know. I typically, white or black is usually the way that I go with these. And that decision kind of sometimes based on what the colors are in the, you know, that I added. All right, I got to get kind of down. A lot of times I find the one thing about these Zens is, if you're like me, I sometimes have a tough time keeping, I don't know, I don't have excellent technique, and so sometimes the longer length of this, it's a little harder for me to keep it kind of straight. So it may have a little bit of a wavy edge. So sometimes it's hard for me to tell what's really going on with the shape from above. So I'll come in and get like really, and the other nice thing is I've got kind of a dark background with this cone. So getting down horizontally, it helps me to kind of see what the edge looks like. So I don't know, I think it has to do with the dark background, whereas this is kind of reflecting light, the bed. It's like silver and kind of bright. So just a little, if you're having issues like getting, like, what does this thing actually look like? That helps me quite a bit. Kind of see what's going on and get things like smoothed out a little bit easier. Especially on these longer ones. All right, I think that's pretty good. Let's stop it and then we'll get a close-up view. Turn the racket off. Yeah, this is looking pretty cool. Definitely less color though, you know. But you know, here's going to be an area where you're going to see that real like 3D kind of look. It's like almost like a sharp ledge. It's kind of cool. Definitely like thinner areas. Because it had spread out further and then we kind of swirled it around, we've really spread that you know 15% of color out throughout the blank. Still has the same feeling, but I kind of agree. I'm not sure that I'm sold on this red. Maybe it has to do with these colors specifically. I don't know, but that white definitely felt like it just was, I don't know, it definitely felt like definitely more like Fordite. This, I don't know, this doesn't feel like Fordite for sure, but kind of interesting. So I think, I don't know, it's tough. Like I'm tempted to kind of go back and say, okay, well, what if we increase this amount to like 30, 40, 50 in these vertical ones. But then at the same time, which, okay, so a couple things would happen if you did that. If you went to like 50% in the tube, I'm going to go over to the other view here. Kind of show you guys a couple things that are going through, you know, rattling in my brain. If we went with like 50% color, right? What we did was we pretty much filled these tubes, you know, to the top for the most part with this round that we just did. So the whole thing was mostly clear resin. And then we just poured, you know, I mean, not much color on the top. And then you're hoping that this stuff kind of goes through. Well, I haven't seen a problem with it doing it horizontally because you can kind of spread it out where you want that resin and kind of get little waves and weird stuff, and it just tends to work a little bit better horizontally. And I would use the same amount of color, right? So it'd be about a 90% or something like that, clear, and then, you know, just about 10 or maybe 15% color. However, if we switched it to 50%, then you're starting way further down in the tube, and then you're pouring on quite a bit of color on top. So what that's going to do is it doesn't have to go as far down into the tube to mix, intermix, and all that stuff. And that might be enough to get you more like Fordite, where the stuff that's painted and clear is just giving you little windows here and there. I don't know. It may overtake it completely though too. So I don't know. I'm on the fence. I'm really on the fence about this. The one conclusion that I have for sure is that you've just got a lot more control, and it's probably smarter to just do it horizontally because you don't run into all these problems. You can kind of control everything. You don't need to start adjusting and doing all these weird things. You can still increase the amount of color that you're adding to the horizontal ones also. I still think that I don't know that I'd even border up on like 50%, because at that point in the horizontal trough, I mean, you're only dropping 3/8 of an inch. Like, it just, you still need to keep a pretty significant amount of clear if you're doing it horizontally. I wouldn't highly alter the amount of color that you're adding as a percentage per blank if you're doing it horizontally. It doesn't need it, and it's going to way over, like you're going to end up with just colorful swirly blanks. I don't think you're going to get much clear in the blank unless you leave. The one thing is though, if you left big sections, you know, depending on how you did it, I guess, how you poured it, but I wouldn't mess with that. I think you're better off, you know, like maxing out at like 25% color or something like that if you're doing it horizontally. But vertically, I don't know. I think if you know, either way, if you stepped it up to 50% or something like that, I think you're still going to be left with mostly color in the end. I don't think a whole lot of that clear is really going to be evident once you're done with this, but there may be little windows and pockets where you get this kind of clear look. So it's kind of an interesting conundrum. Let's see what you guys have to say. Let's see here. It was just in the blank. Oh, yeah. You do not want to use acrylic. The problem is it's water-based, and the only resin that can sometimes tolerate acrylic paint is polyester resin. That stuff's terrible. So let's just throw that out. But even epoxy, if you're doing like Alumilite, if you're using it with a urethane, you're done. Like it ain't gonna work, period. Sometimes you could maybe get the epoxy to kind of work, but even epoxies are pretty, when you're talking about like a water-based pigment, it just doesn't, it's not compatible. So definitely, yeah. Always use something that's, you know, I always recommend using colorants that are, you know, sold by a resin company, by an epoxy. It doesn't matter what brand it is, but as long as it's an epoxy or a urethane resin, and stay away from things. You can even fall into the trap if the company sells polyester resin, there's a chance that they may have colorants that have some amount of water in them. So totally throw those out the window. There's just not that many of those around anymore because that stuff is terrible to work with. There's almost no advantage except for a few certain cases, for certain types of things that you're doing. So as long as it's like an epoxy company or they sell urethane and epoxy, you know, whatever, their colorants should work fine pretty much with any resin that you're using. So Alumilite dye, that'll work with anything. Divine Pigments, mine work with anything. You know, whatever Total Boat sells, I don't know what I don't work with them, with their products much, but I'm sure they have colorants. Entropy, Whatever eye candy, they've got a resin promise they've been using, and I think that they are coming out with their own or something. I didn't see, it was way too long. They had a live stream and I was like, don't have enough time to listen to hear, but I think they might be coming out with their own epoxy maybe. So as long as they sell resin, you should be good to go with whatever colorants they're selling to use with that resin. Again, as long as that resin is like an epoxy or a urethane base, it should work with any epoxy or urethane based resin. Let's see here. Yeah, you can definitely see the depth in this one. There's obviously less color. So let's see. David has a question. What if you use black mica instead of clear? Black mica instead of clear. Well, it depends on how much. And you'd get a slightly different look. You wouldn't get the depth probably, like no matter what. Even if it was somewhat on the kind of like translucent side, you didn't put much black mica in. You're really just not going to get as much depth because there's stuff in the way, you know. So anything that you add to the clear is going to diminish the three-dimensional effects. But I mean, it'll work fine. I mean, at that point, you're kind of talking about just a color swirl blank, you know. It's just kind of like adding another color, except just a lot of that. I think the problem with doing that is what you're going to end up with, really, especially if you're talking about like 15 or 20% colors like we did, and then you got like 90% black mica, you're really just not going to see much color. They're just not going to, not much is really going to come through probably. I don't know for sure. But you can one of the things, you know, it seems like looking at this, you're like, oh, well, you'd get kind of some similar types of things. The problem is when you're looking at this, it may not be as apparent on camera, but there's a lot of depth going on. So if you've got black mica powder, so I'm going to try and point out some things on this, and maybe it'll kind of help you understand. Like I said, I'm not sure what the camera shows, how much of the three dimensions you can see with this. So I'm going to try and kind of point out some things here. And some of this is what I kind of think, you know, like I'm not sure, but there's a couple things on these, like, so this white patch, these very thin pieces right here, this white, the white and the I think that's like probably the coral, maybe this green. Basically, all you're going to get is like really thin wisps here and there, very thin. If like this green here, all around this kind of orange and white part, that would probably be gone. Like you wouldn't see that at all in the middle here. So you'd have it would be mostly black, basically. The only thing that you would see is whatever's on the top surface of these things. So, you know, it could be cool. I'm not saying it's not good. It's just, it's not going to be like this because there's so many levels, and anything that's not on the outside surface is going to be black. So you're going to take away even more of the color that you see in this thing. Right now, you can see all the way through to the tube. So even if it's on the inside, you know, bottom inside of the blank where you drilled out, it's like butting up against the drill hole, you're still seeing that color. So it would just diminish the amount of color that you would see significantly. So hopefully that kind of made sense. All right, let me oh, do I not? I'm not understanding. It was painted, and I don't understand why it cracked. Maybe it's because the glue bond really wasn't holding on to anything. Is that what you're saying? The glue bond was just holding on to the paint, basically, and it probably just split. It's probably more of like a catch, like I was kind of having a little vibration on the end there. Is that maybe what you were saying? Eye candy paste dyes will not work with clear slow. I used them, they worked fine. Paint cracked. Okay. Oh, I see. It just, yeah, because it dries and peeled back. If you want a crackle effect, that might be kind of cool. You might be able to actually utilize that for something. And if there was like see-through parts in between the cracks, you could paint the tube behind it and you'd have little kind of crackle effects. That might be actually kind of cool. All right, that ought to be good. Yeah, I think it'll work with urethanes too. Jake uses them, I'm pretty sure. I'm not a big fan of those things anyway, though. They're just super messy, super thick, and they're not. What I was hoping, because I thought they would be really great, but you still don't. They're not more concentrated. You still have to use like the same amount to get the same. Because I tried their yellow. I always have problems with yellow, and part of the problem is there's really just not enough pigment. Like it's really weird. It's like it's weaker than other ones. And so what I was trying to do is get yellow and blue, yellow and dark blue to work. And I was like, oh, maybe there's it's super thick and all this. And it's not any more concentrated. It's just super thick. Like whatever the stuff they add to make it like liquidish is just super thick. And I was like, these are just kind of terrible. Like I'd rather just use like Divine Pigments or, mine, like that type of a pigment where it comes out of the bottle instead of you scooping it out with a spoon. I didn't see an advantage really. All right, so then we got some green going here. This ought to be pretty good now. I always like to do the long ways with the lathe off just to kind of break up those scratch patterns. I think that it helps the next step sand a little bit better and get rid of those things. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can use their paste if you want with urethanes too. I will say they've come out with more colors and stuff too. So I mean, you know, it's an option. Especially, I don't know what's going on with the Vine. I mean, they've been the go-to for that for you know, a resin kind of pigment dye, liquid pigment for forever. But I'm not sure what's going on. I think Braxton's had some health issues and stuff, and I don't know that they're restocking, or I don't know exactly what's going on. Oh, one thing I did want to mention, I talked to Chad. So last week I was saying, you know, you can buy the clear PVC from Turner's, but they were out. But I called him just specifically to ask about that. They should be back in stock at Turner's, the clear PVC, soon. He didn't give me like a day or whatever, but I would say in the next week or two they should be back in stock. It's kind of what I was getting from him. So. Again, there are places where you can buy like the, you know, 5-foot sections of it and all that, but then you got to cut it. You got to deal with the edges somehow. And sometimes that's just not necessarily worth it, especially for the clear. And no matter what, the clears are going to be more expensive no matter what. Then you got to pay for shipping on something that's like 5 foot long. And in the end, you're like, okay, is it worth it? You know, so if you can just get like the lengths that you need from them already pre-cut and everything's all good on those, might be worth waiting rather than just trying to scour the internet. Did I do gray? Jesus, what am I doing? I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna do gray. I think I did, but I'll just do kind of a little quickie here. And shut it off. Usually I end with it off and I do this thing. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay. Try that off. Okay. Now we'll go through our magic juice. Gotta get me some more blue towels. So overall, I would definitely say I like the white background better. And I like the other one having more color in it. So, you know, I think if you were going to do vertical, you know, here's the thing. If all you've got is vertical silicone molds or PVC pipes, that's what the molds you have, and you're like, I don't really want to have to go buy, you know, horizontal molds of some sort. I think a reasonable trade-off, I don't know that going up to like 50% is really going to be awesome, you know, but I think if you hit like maybe 25% color and then went somewhere in between the two numbers, because I think we poured the first one at like 87. That's what I was going for. That's what I wrote down. I'd have to go back and double check and just kind of see. Now, one of the problems is that temperature was a little bit hard to tell exactly what temperature I was at. I don't know if you guys remember that. So even the high number, I'm not 100% sure because I didn't really have a cup of full resin to really know what the temperature was. So it was a little bit arbitrary with these temperature numbers. And the way to kind of combat that a little bit and know a little bit more about, you know, try and hone in on, you know, what is the temperature that I'm pouring at. Maybe use like don't pour the clear in like immediately. Like use that cup as the number, the temperature number, right? And you don't even necessarily, like this may be a weird one where what you might want to do is you're not exactly, it's going to be a different scale possibly than if you were just doing color swirl blanks. You know, like normal vertical pour, mica powders, you know, whatever. We're not doing any of this kind of weird wispy stuff. You're just throwing 3 colors together and mixing them. Like maybe you know your numbers for like a pretty standard vertical pour. But that's going to be, you know, like let's say you mixed up like whatever, 300 grams of resin total, and you had 3 different cups, so each cup's 100 grams of resin. The temperature, that may be a slightly different temperature than a giant cup of clear resin. So instead, you may have to do a few little test type things to kind of hone this in, but instead, use a number, and it'll still be the temperature number, but it'll be the temperature number of this larger single cup of of clear resin, whatever resin you want. Probably easier to do it with urethane actually, but like Alumilite. But anyway, so throw out that word epoxy. But you got your big jug of clear. That may heat up a little bit differently than a cup of 100 grams or something. I don't know. It may be slightly different than your normal standard way of doing things with the temperature. But before you pour that into the tubes, leave it in the cup and just use that number as a guide, which is actually telling you when to pour the clear in. So that's why this is going to be, hopefully this makes some sense. The problem is you're going to take the temperature, you haven't poured the clear into the tubes yet, so there's going to be some time lag while you fill those tubes also. So it's just not exactly apples to apples like a normal color swirl type pour vertically, but kind of utilize that number because it'll be, I just find it's harder like with these super tiny cups of resin, like the temperatures that I get are kind of all over the board. And if I've got a full cup, like 100 grams, like a normal size cup, I find sometimes those smaller ones are like a different temperature. So, and sometimes even I got like 5 different small cups and they all kind of are showing me different temperatures sometimes. So they just seem harder to like really hone in on what is the actual temperature in this cup. But the larger size cups are a little bit more predictable, like they're not all over the board feeling. So you use that big cup of epoxy, or not epoxy, big cup of clear. Use that as the temperature as to when you're going to actually like start pouring the clear in the tubes, and then move on to the pouring the individual colors. But like in my instance, I would maybe go with 90. Again, my shop temperature is like 68 to 70, something like that. Maybe start pouring the tubes, that clear into the tubes at like 90, and then immediately after that you pour in your colors. Start pouring those colors in. Maybe that would be a good number, or maybe like, depending on how long it takes you to pour the clear in, maybe 85 or something, and just kind of play around with that. But like I said, if you really just don't want to have to do the horizontal thing, I think that if you just altered the numbers a little bit, I think you can get pretty similar results as to what I did on the first one. But you don't want to go. The problem we had was we poured at such a high temperature that it just would not go down into the tube. It didn't sink far enough. So you're going to have to adjust that number down, but also if you adjust the amount of clear down, it doesn't have to go as far through the tube. So maybe like 30% compared to like, so 70% clear resin, 30% is going to be divvied amongst the colors. And then just slightly increase from where we poured the temperature to kind of help with the bleeding a little bit. Because this seems a little bit more bleedy, which I'm not totally surprised about. And and then maybe utilize the clear cup. Don't pour it right away into the tubes. Use that as the guide to give you consistency. Like that's going to take, you're going to have to kind of dial in that timing, but I think that's a more consistent way to go, is utilize that cup as to when you start pouring that, and then just, you know, it's going to be all, you know, the clear and the colors are going to follow right after. There's stuff all over the place. I don't know. Emil, how's it going? Barb's here too. How's it going? Yeah, not too bad. The first one actually looked a little bit better. I'll show you. We'll show you the, you know, both of them. We just didn't have as much color. That's why I'm going in depth about these breakdowns and numbers and all these things. I was just kind of looking at it, and we kind of mentioned it at kind of the beginning, like the way these were split up, it was pretty much like 85% clear resin, about, you know, in these things. It was, I mean, that was the breakdown. So like about 15% was mixed amongst different colors out of the total amount of resin. And I think that we just need, especially if you're doing vertical, I think you're going to need to increase that amount of color. You know, so adjust that ratio of clear to colored resins a little bit. Oh shoot, I dropped my microfiber on the ground. That's not good. That side's dead. That way you can get a little bit more color in your blank, you know. I don't know what step I'm on. Good Lord. Excuse me. I think I just did 4, but we're going to do that again, because I don't know. We'll get double forward. I'm doing pretty good. It's pretty fun seeing this little experiment. I never really thought about doing a vertical color splash, drop, whatever, this type of thing. Now, so having said all that I just said, if you've got horizontal molds, I really think that's the way to go. I think you can get away with it. I think if you made some adjustments, I think you would get closer to the look of the first one. You would need to add more color to get that throughout the blank. But I think the reality is you've just got so much more control doing it horizontally that I really think that's, if you're going to do this type of blank, just do it horizontal, and I think you're going to get better results and more consistent results probably too. Another thing that might kind of help, I'm not 100% sure, but I think something that might kind of help if I was going to do another test, I think instead of using a straight stick to stir these up, I think what I would do is go with the hook one, because you would probably get more color spread throughout the blank. Now that may thin it out even more though, so I'm not 100% sure if that's really gonna like make the difference or anything, but I think if you increase the amount of color, you know, total percentage out of the resin, if you got like 30% or, you know, whatever, something like that, 30%, maybe even up to like 40, I don't know. Eventually you kind of get to a point where it's going to be mostly colors all you're going to see, so I'm not sure where the line is. But you increase the amount of color in the blanks, then use, you know, and in addition use that hooked like little stick thing to kind of stir it around in there. Maybe you won't get it as thinned out, and it might just work. But like I said, I really think that you're better off just going horizontal. It doesn't, that's the thing about it is it's pretty simple. Like I'm pretty sure that I've done videos on my channel. I would search, if you want to search for graffiti blanks, pretty sure that I have a video that shows how to do them the way that I've done them in the past. And I know for sure Chad's got videos and like live streams. They've made, he calls his color drop. I kind of called these color splash because it seemed kind of like, I don't know, graffiti's kind of weird. Doesn't, I don't know if people, to me they look like when you do it horizontally, the first time I did it, it looked like graffiti paint, sorta, or something like that. So that's why I called it that. But I kind of like I don't want to call them color drop, obviously, because that's Turner's Warehouse. So color splash. Yeah, so search Turner's Warehouse, YouTube channel for color drop. Search mine for graffiti, and you'll find like how I do the horizontal ones. There's nothing to it. It's just kind of the same general idea as what I did vertically, but pretty sure like somewhere around like, I don't know, I would say like 80 to 90% clear. You'd pour it the same way, but your temperature is going to be quite a bit higher. Like I think you're definitely going to be 95, maybe even like 100 under the same conditions that I was pouring the vertical ones. That's the one thing I'm not 100% sure of. I'd have to kind of look at my notes or go back to that video and see what numbers and stuff I was using for my version of them. But it allows you, because you're pouring it horizontally, you can put the colors where you want. It's so much easier to get it spread throughout the entire blank. And you can even go back and add a little bit of like just a little stick swirl in there as well. But I gotta be honest, this looks all right. Now I got a big kind of splotchy area right here where it kind of looks like, I don't know, maybe I didn't get it painted very well. This looks like kind of shiny where it's almost like it didn't, I don't know, somehow it came off like an adhesion glue issue maybe, I don't know. Got a couple little spots. That's what I was saying. The hardest thing about these is getting the paint to be like perfect on the inside. And for anybody that's just joining, one thing that I totally forgot to try this. I think it would be, I don't know if it's going to solve the problem completely and get rid of these little weird areas that I've got here, but if you had any kind of little contamination particles, oils or something inside the tube, like if you used a drill bit that had oil on it, most likely there's going to be little oil spots. It may not be a lot, but if you just got a little drip or drop of oil on the inside of the blank and then you go and try and paint it, it's not going to work too well. So what I would recommend is maybe try cleaning out the inside of the blank before you paint with like a denatured alcohol. Just put some on a Q-tip and just kind of wipe it around in there. That might help a little bit with some of that stuff. But from like 5 feet away, if you're not like really inspecting this like under a microscope, everything looks pretty good. And you've got some really interesting colors here and there. I just wish there was more, And I think everybody would kind of agree with that. One of the drawbacks to the way that we did these things is I think it kind of pushed it pushed the colors like around in a circle rather than like spreading it through the blank. We just kind of made a circle thing and there was a lot missing from kind of the center, which is why we have like not much color, because there was a lot more color in the blank originally. Well, somewhat, but it kind of wrapped around in kind of a single strand instead of being really spread throughout the blank. So that's why we have kind of areas where kind of shows up, but there's a lot missing. Now here's the other one, and this one looks fabulous. A lot more color. The white is what we painted the inside, which I think worked a lot better with these blanks. But in this one, we poured at a much higher temperature, and basically all of that resin stayed at one end of the blank, and that's what I cut out basically. So even with this, and it looks like it's like almost fully color, if you actually look down the center, look at how much clear is in there. by using that little stir stick, it just kind of spread it around the edges. And that's why we end up with, you know, in this case, all this white would have been clear. However, we've got a significant amount. So it's kind of tough. I really think that the best way to go is just do it horizontally. You got that control that you need to get the colors in the places that you want spread, you know, pretty evenly throughout the blank. I'm gonna wipe this other one off one more time. And I just think you're gonna get better results. It's gonna be easier, it's gonna be more consistent results. I think it would take a decent amount of playing around to really get the vertical thing locked in, and frankly, in the end, it may not be something that can really get very locked in, like it, because of the way that you're pouring it. So let's see here. I'm gonna switch. Let's see. I gotta turn my camera back on because it always shuts off. Go back to the one. All right. So let's put together this Zen, and I might have a kit for this Sierra because that's actually. I mean, I like that one a lot better, honestly. This guy zoomed in. Get this thing open. My little pad is really doing a great job. All right. So I chose a satin chrome, satin silver, Zen. Just got to find it. Here we go. For this guy, now I'm not sure which direction I want to go. I'm thinking if you're holding the pen, and there's no clip on the Zen kit to cover up anything. I think I like it. I think I like it like this. So we'll put the nib on this end. But these Zen kits are pretty simple. Pretty easy to do. Pop this guy in here. And there we go. And pop the little end cap piece in there. That one was even easier, and that's all you got to do. I do need to put the spring in the bottom of this guy and put the, oh, I'm missing it. Oh, there's the ink. But I love these things because the cap just is magnetic and it also posts magnetically. But it's a rollerball pen. And I don't know, I really love just picking one of these guys up and just go to town real quick. It writes nice with the rollerball. Let's see here. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of wax on those threads so it doesn't squeak when I open it up. I do like the satin silver with this pen. Kind of adds just another little bit of color in there. It actually kind of helps break up how much red is in this thing. Because that's one of the problems. That red, I'm not sure that was, you know, with this much real estate, clear, you know, resin, it just kind of overtakes everything a little bit too much. But with this kind of extra little white bit, yeah, it takes your, I don't know, just it's enough distraction away from all that red to help a little bit. Put a little bit of wax on this other end. I usually open the top part, the nib side, when I'm refilling, but if for some reason I decided to open this thing, I'm actually going to take this out for a second and just get this. It'll be easier to kind of thread it in and out. There we go. Like I said, I find it easier to load from the top. Something to actually grab onto. No squeaks, no nothing. So that's pretty good. It's good. Like I said, I think the problem is we did that white one first. And this looks pretty fabulous. Like that's a pretty good looking blank. The colors, everything just worked out really well on that one. And then we did this one and you're like, well, you know, it's a little bit less good than the other one. But if you didn't have that other one to look at, this is pretty cool. Again, that red doesn't match up as well with all these colors. I don't know. I think that's actually kind of more the problem with this thing. It just doesn't really go as well with the colors that are in the blank. Looks a little off. This one looks, you know, that white looks pretty good. And again, amazingly, the color combination, which is kind of an odd color combination in this blank, works really well together. That's pretty cool. So let's see if we got a Sierra variant that I can... the one thing about this is I had issues getting the tube in, and I'm just not sure. This thing may not really want to go together very well. What do we got? Those are Zens. Blue. Thinking silver might be a good way to go on this one. Antique silver. Let's just go with the silver one. I got a Monarch. So I'm going to, well, yeah. Let's see here. So like I said, one of these sides is kind of bent, honestly. Like I literally had to hammer the tube in, and I actually think this blank is shorter than it really should be. So this may not work particularly well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to identify which side of this thing has the messed up tube. Because I think that the nib side might fit easier. That thing you can kind of take it in and out easier. So that looks like the wrong, yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount, this side doesn't work. It's kind of bent up and messed up in there. It's just, I can't get the normal bushing in. So I'm gonna put the part that you actually have to press in on the side that's good. Let me just double check and make sure I did that right. Yep. So I can do that. Before I even do that, I want to see if the nib side will actually go in. Should. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this should work out okay. And I think... This is a tough one. I think I'm going to keep it... I could cover up this white a little bit, but I don't really love the rest of that on the front of the pen. So I think I'm just going to go this way with it. Maybe like right there. Try and get that kind of halfway started. Actually, I want to flip this. Let's see. Where did I have that? Okay. Let's do it like that. Let's see what we got here. Now, like I said, the other problem is technically I didn't get the tube all the way in. So if this is too short, then the ink is not really going to work. Oh, man, this thing is just not really wanting to work here. Oh, come on. This is the good side. I think. Jeez. This whole thing is shifting. Okay. Yeah. Whew. Okay, let's try to do this. Not working too well. Oh, man, I don't know. Oh, jeez. Oh, whew. That was a struggle. Oh my God. Okay. So, like I said, we got that in there. I don't know if it's ever coming out again. Let's see if the ink actually works or not, because if you shorten the thing too much, I mainly just wanted to see what it looked like. So this was, meant to just be kind of a test, and I wasn't going to put it together actually, but oh, actually maybe it will work. Maybe it doesn't matter on these. This might work actually. I'm not sure if it matters on these Sierra variants. I don't know. Oh, it worked. I think. No. See, that's the problem. Oh, maybe it does work. It actually works. It ain't great. I don't know that this is the highest quality pen I've ever made, but it does retract all the way, so that's good. You can go too far a little bit. It's kind of sticking out a little bit farther than normal. It feels like, I don't know, but you don't have to go out all the way out. I don't know. Actually, it works. I think it's working fine. Yeah, I think we're okay. That's pretty nice looking. I like that. That's a pretty good looking pen right there. And like I said, this one's not bad. It's just the red just really takes over this thing. It's just kind of killing everything. Not as much cool. Not as much cool. So, whew, we made it. I already deburred everything. That thing was just tight. Yeah, I deburr the whole thing when I'm, because the way I kind of have to, otherwise the bushings don't fit in. So what I do kind of depends, but when I'm squaring up the ends, I use the sander, and a lot of times it kind of pushes over, or like rolls over the edge of the tube a little bit anyway, so like I can't even get my bushings in. So I use a couple different things. If there's a little bit of glue, I just have this little, I don't know what this thing is. It's a 3-sided kind of like metal thing. And I'll just go in there and scrape, and I actually hit that on the inside edge with to kind of peel off that little burr that's kind of folded up. The other thing you can do is use something like this. Just goes in there and it'll kind of take off the outside edge as well. So I do that before every time. The biggest problem was the reason that was so difficult was when I glued the tube in, the white paint was so thick that the tube wouldn't go in, and I think my glue started setting up on me, and I literally took a hammer and was trying to get the tube to go in, and it really wasn't going anywhere. So the tube bent all over the place, and it was just a bad situation in general with the blank. Usually they're not that bad, but sometimes they are. It's a little bit of a, patience. You can usually get the thing in there. So overall, what do you guys think about the vertical color splash thing? I've given you guys my thoughts about what, I think in the future, I'm probably just doing them horizontally. They just work better. It's just easier. Again, I would prefer to be able to do it vertically. They're just so much easier to process the blanks. But the one advantage, if you do, so, if you pour these in a brick, then you're going to have to cut every blank out. And this is actually another reason why I actually don't do it this way in a full-size brick. This is easy. This works fine, but you will have to cut them, each blank out at that point. I actually kind of forgot. One of the reasons why I actually like using these molds specifically, is you can pop them out and they're so smooth that, you know, if I'm selling a blank or sending it to like a customer, basically, the resulting blank is very clear. So I don't have to do any cutting or do anything, and you can see everything that's going on in there. The Jake blank one is good too, and it's generally going to be pretty clear, but it's just a little bit, if I remember correctly, it was just like it left the edges a little bit harder to see in. These ones were just like dead smooth. So that's the only reason that I do that. And so for the pen blank club folks, I'm gonna pour yours in this one, and when it comes, I'm not even going to cut the top off, because if I make a cut in these things, it totally obscures the view, and I'd either have to like spray acrylic or something over it or polish them. I'm not doing that. So so what I do is I just leave them I don't cut the tops off. I just leave them as they are as I remove them. I do kind of deburr. There's usually like a little bit of a kind of a sharp thing sticking up. So I'm going to deburr that so it's not like sharp or anything like that. But I leave them totally clear so that you can see exactly what the blank looks like. You may need to, if you want, you could square it, but you can start turning it. It's just going to be a little bit, what ends up happening is they're usually a little bit taller than they are wide. So it's up to you. If you want to cut it, go for it, but you can just chuck it up as it is, like, you know, drill a hole in it and chuck it, and then you just round it and everything's fine. But I like to leave them that way in these blanks, especially when you can see through something like that. I want the clearest version of them, and so I can just pop them out. So basically what I was getting at is, you know, I do like how simple vertical pours are. You don't have to do any cutting. You just lop off one end if you want, rather than a brick where you're making 24 cuts to get everything perfectly square. But with these guys, you can just pop them out. The nice thing about these molds is these are Turner's Warehouse ones, the Maker Select. They've got this, it's HDPE, so it's non-stick, but, you know, the blank may not just pop out. So you got this little hole, and the way these work actually is grab yourself just an air nozzle, and you can just blow air out. You don't even have to, originally these were made for like a punch, but you can usually, and you definitely need to spray these with mold release first. But they may be a little sticky. They may not just want to pop right out, but you just blow air through the bottom and they just pop out. It's great. When you're casting with them though, make sure you put the plug back in the bottom. So anyway, I think that's probably the best way to go, but I'd like to hear what you guys think about that. What would you do to see what, you know, use a drill bit by hand and spin it inside. Yeah, well, I do. Yeah, the problem is that could work, I guess. I don't find that maybe a drill bit if I found the right one, I guess, but you'd have to find the perfect size. I used to use the what do they call those things? I can't think of the word. I don't know. I can't think of the word for these. I used to use these, but these things are not a very tight fit on the inside. They don't get glue off. They get huge chunks of it, but if there's any like any thin amount of stuff, you're not going to get the bushings in, and you're not going to get your kit in. So I just use that little scraper thing, and it works better for me. So let's see here. Yeah, no, the red one looks good. I definitely like the white one better. Like I was saying, I think that's part of the problem. I think if we would have done the red one first, I would have been like, well, that's okay. We got some color. It's not as much as I would have wanted. But I still think then we would have done the white one even after that, and I would have been like, oh, that's way better. You know, that one turned out a lot better overall. I would actually say these turned out better than I expected. That's the reality. I was very skeptical that this was going to work off the bat. It worked out how I kind of thought it might, but I would say that it worked a little bit better than I thought. At least I would say this is about what I expected. This one is, you know, and even if we would have done white or whatever, there's just less color going on in there. And so that's kind of what I expected a little bit. This one turned out significantly better than I expected, but it was color jammed much more together. So that's kind of the thing. Like alternatively, you could, like here's another thought. Like, I mean, you could probably pour, get rid of the clear. Well, yeah, that doesn't really work either. I was going to say you could just make the clear parts white resin, but that doesn't work. You're still not going to get the three-dimensional effect unless you do clear and then paint the inside of the blank. So that doesn't really work. Yeah, now, one thing that I will say is if you do the horizontal version, if you want a little bit more of like the Fordite where you really have layers stacked, I do think that you're probably going to want to increase the amount of color in the whole thing. Like in the past, I did like 90% clear, 10%. Like that was kind of the number that I would go with. And in that case, what I was going for was just very thin wisps of random colors. But I think if you really want to go for the Fordite thing, I would actually increase the amount of color. And what I'm going to do, so I'll just let you know what I plan to do. I'm going to be making the pen blank club ones. I'm going to be using these. It doesn't really matter which mold. One of the nice things about these is you're not going to waste resin cutting, because like every cut you make is also just going to waste some resin. That's turn into shavings right off the bat. So that's another thing, is you will save a little bit more resin doing it in like singles like this. But either way, if you've got just one of these, they work fine. You're just going to waste a little bit of resin in the middle, but you're going to get the same pretty much effect as these. But what I'm going to do for these, and I'll just let everybody know, I'm going to go for a 25-75, so 75% clear, 25% colors, or somewhere around there, maybe 30. You know, it kind of depends on, sometimes it just depends on what the numbers actually look like, how much resin per cup. I tend to go for like, you know, even numbers or something like that. So somewhere in that general vicinity, I want to make it look a little bit more Fordite-like. So get more of these layers of colors and more color in general throughout their blank. And again, the way that I'm going to do this is you can watch my video. Again, I think videos in the past that I've done, if it's a 90-10 type thing, it's going to be more spread out. Like there's going to be less color and like more pockets of color. But again, you can kind of get it spread throughout the blank. So there's color throughout it more than this, which had like significant clear areas, you know, kind of thing. But I'm going to go overhead here real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have this guy, you know, set up, and I'll have my, I'll just give you a quick little, you know, I'm going to pour my clear in. Again, if you're doing it horizontally, you're going to need to go, I need to look up, I don't know offhand what the temperature numbers that I would use typically. I haven't done this for a while, so I just don't know that off the top of my head. But I want to say you're looking at like, I mean, really, I may be wrong about this, but I think that we're looking at like 100 degrees is when I want to start pouring these colors. Because it just doesn't have that far to go. Like it's going to be enough time for it to sink. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just kind of pour them like this over and over, you know, not drop it like that, but pour the colors over and over the same exact way that we did the other one. Make sure white is one of your colors because it helps sink, you know, the color. And just pour it like one on, like, and like follow the same pattern kind of thing. Each color, stacking them on top of each other. And what I probably will do is come back with like a little stir stick kind of thing, probably something like this, and then just kind of wiggle it around in there to even spread it further. So what I'm going for is a lot less of this, what I'm hoping will happen is less of this just clear, you know, big clear areas that you're going to have to paint and hope that the paint looks good. I want to kind of get rid of that as much as possible to make them look a little bit more like this side of the blank, where you've got a good amount of color going on. The white in this part is going to be what the clear would be. But that's what I'm going to try to aim for with these things. And we'll see. Like, you know, I don't know. I can't guarantee that it's going to be perfect, but I do think that because you've got more control over where you're putting the colors and things, how things are working, I think this should be a little bit easier. And we'll have to see when the blanks, you know, when I get them done and demolded, we'll see how well I think I did, kind of thing. So, David, are you putting these in the, yeah, so like I said, I'm going to do horizontal. We're just going to chuck the other, not chuck them, but the other ones are not going in any of the Pen Blank Club things. Because like half of them are just half a blank, basically. And then the other ones are going to be more like the red one, which is, you know, not awesome. So I'm just going to redo all of them horizontally, and that's what's going in Pen Blank Club this month. One of the blanks, anyway. So anyway, so I think that's about it. Anybody got any other questions before we wrap things up? And just to let everybody know, I think next week, I think I've already got a plan. I think we're going to finally do, I've been meaning to do this actually for a little bit. We're going to do super chat colors. We're going to go wild and crazy and do probably, I don't know, it just depends on how many super chats we get, I guess, but like something like minimum five colors. And you guys are going to pick it. So that should be the plan for next week on the stream. That should be pretty fun. I always love those because you guys pick some awesome colors. And we got a lot of different colors to choose from. So it's always a good one. All right. So I don't know what the time delay is on this. So I'm just going to wait and see if there's any other questions real quick. A couple more minutes. I'll just keep chatting. Maybe have a drink. And that should be it. All right. I don't see any other questions, so I think we're going to hang it up. But we'll be back next week. Pretty good experiment. Like I said, I'm not disappointed. So I hope nobody thinks that I'm like, oh, the red one's kind of I'm not disappointed. That's probably what I expected. I was actually pretty happily surprised at the white one. It turned out pretty darn good. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a great rest of the evening and get in the shop and make something fun. Don't forget, again, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, resin prices are going up. So if you are like, I need resin soon, like next month, I would go ahead and pull the trigger like now. Like this weekend, do it before the month changes even, because prices may be going up like next month. So just make sure to get that, lock in your price now, get it ordered as soon as possible so that you don't, so you can put off the raises in prices. And I don't know what, I'm just saying, I've heard through the grapevine, let's say, at least a few companies are raising their prices. That probably means they all are. So if you need resin, definitely order it now and get that thing on lock, so that you're not right out the gates paying for higher prices. So anyway, guys, again, have a great night. Thanks for joining the fun, and I'll see you guys on the next stream.